All right. So guys, I mean, I really don't have any like epic info to share other than what Sean will likely share here. So, and I'm just going to turn it over to y'all. I'm trying to think. If you hadn't been on a meeting in a while, we do repost these meetings online for people to see. So if you have stuff you don't want to share publicly, feel free to wait until the end. Sebastian, it is nice to have you here, sir. Thanks for joining. And
Good to be here.
I'm going to be quiet here, Sean. I'm going to let you take over.
Oh, okay. I haven't attended a meeting for a while, so obviously I've missed a few. I don't have a lot of updates to give today, but other than in the last meeting that I attended, I was asked to set up a meeting with someone from the Orchard Project just to get sort of a demo or an overview. I think, Ash, you asked if I could do that. And so Sebastian Ross, who I guess is the main contributor to the Orchard Project, is able to meet with whoever's available the same time tomorrow. So at this exact same time slot tomorrow. I asked if he could do today, but they actually have their weekly Orchard Project meetings at this time slot every week. So it didn't work.
Yes, I'm going to send out an invite with that information to everybody. If you can't make it, don't worry. We will, obviously record it or whatever. But I will send that out.
Yeah. So I realize some people probably just have to watch recordings. And this is again just to provide some overview of what Orchard Core offers. It's it's just probably going to be interesting maybe to look at another solution that's based on.
Was he forthcoming? Like, what was his reaction, Sean? Like,
issues that we might run into.
Did Sean's audio cut out for any of y'all?
Probably.
Okay.
So Sean, the question was like, what was his reception like? Was he was he looking forward to something, or was it?
He was happy to do a demo of Orchard Core to us. I told him that their different options are still being evaluated, and that mainly this is just for informational purposes for the group, to just get more awareness of what Orchard's been working on.
It's good. It's very good. Very exciting. I will be here. Good. Thank you, Sean. I'm assuming you'll be there, Sean?
Yes, I will be. Yeah.
Okay, it's good. It's good. Any other, is that Mitch Sellers or is that some other Mitch?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. I don't know who all wants to participate tomorrow. It'll be great to have some Q&A there. Kind of pick his brain.
Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend tomorrow. But hopefully a few of the rest of you will be able to.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. How was the MVP summit, Mitch?
MVP summit was good. There was a little bit of an update for those that were able to attend on Friday when we had a quick next discussion. I can give a quick rundown for, I guess, how many haven't watched the recording from Friday?
I have not.
Everybody? Okay. So the short summary is I did manage to corner Scott Hanselman and Scott Hunter to get their opinion on DNN, helping DNN, future, that kind of thing. Learned that there have been conversations already between ESW and Microsoft but those conversations have kind of stalled. So I'm trying to figure out who is involved in those conversations and to try to help orchestrate moving forward. We don't know much more than that.
I think
Yeah.
you got answers back on that though, didn't you? Because I was that email thread. So, yeah. So as far as I know, Will Morganwick back in October, November had reached out and was in discussions with Scott Hunter, but then obviously those conversations never continued, and Will is no longer with ESW. And then the only other people that have reached out to anyone on that team would have been me, I guess, reaching out to Sebastian Ross, who does work for the ASP.NET team. And I think Andy replied to your email and said no one else that he's aware of has.
Right. So I'm waiting to hear from Scott Hunter as to who, because Microsoft tried to reach back out. So my guess is Microsoft maybe was trying to reach back out to Will and
Probably.
didn't know that Will wasn't there.
Right.
So basically, the request from me at Summit was, to follow up with Scott Hunter, and then he would get back with me this week, post Summit. I am waiting to hear back from him. I did email him at his request, and once we know a little bit more, I think the biggest thing that came out of it is they believe that it's important that this community have a pathway forward. Nothing official, as I didn't really get a chance to ask those individuals, but talking around to a few other MVPs and folks that know DNN, there definitely was not nearly as much support in that group for something on top of Orchard, just because of a desire of differentiating. But that was not anything as a Microsoft opinion. That was more of an MVP, random other people. So I'm trying to at least figure out what that is, because I don't even know what the conversations were about. I don't know what the direction was. I just know that there's interest in Microsoft in making sure this goes forward. What that translates to, what kind of assistance, what kind of guidance, what their thoughts are. Like, I literally know nothing more than they've been trying to get this conversation started and it keeps stalling. So I'm hoping with a little bit of luck, as the community and with this group that we've assembled, that we'll be able to kind of grab their attention and figure out where to go.
Clint, is it possible to reach out to Will Morganwick? Just ask what might have been discussed?
Yeah, no, I can email him or call him or text him and see if he's got any insight into that.
And Mitch, which video were you referring to? Will you be able to share the link?
Clint, I guess, was Friday's call recorded?
No, if that's just the VNext group, you just need to go on the VNext channel, and I posted the PowerPoint. I think I did record it, but I don't think I posted it because it was just like, it was just kind of us recapping stuff. But the next steps are the two PowerPoint slides.
Okay, so this was an internal video. Okay, I got it.
Yeah. So you can see it in that VNext channel. So, but yeah, so I will definitely send out the invite for tomorrow's demo. Sean, thanks for lining that up. And I guess while we've got like everybody here, I mean, unless you guys have some other items you want to discuss, I don't know, like some of these tech questions that are in VNext channel. I mean, should we discuss that stuff? Is that too down in the weeds? I mean, we got Sean here, right? So should we ask any like strategic DNN questions like, hey, does it make sense to try this route? What do you guys want to do?
I do have one topic outside of VNext that I want to bring up here.
Okay.
Do you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's about GDPR. right? To the regulations in the Europe, and I have so from an update from my side, I do have now. I'm kind of looking after the product organization for DNN now going forward, and I do have actually a group of people now, but one person dedicated to DNN is a technical product manager. It's just coming up to speed. It's just, as you know, DNN is so vast, and his first assignment is to look into GDPR. Because there are other companies in ESW, they have a mandate to implement GDPR also in a very short period of time. And so is DNN. So he has been tasked to do that, but I wanted to hear, I know Mitch, you had a blog out. I think it was a little bit generic. I think, do you guys have any pointers, any ideas how we can have some quick wins without going too much in detail? So I'm looking essentially for some directions for that, my TPM, called Technical Product Manager, so he can start digging into certain areas and propose a few solutions to ensure that DNN is GDPR compliant.
I guess from my experience, DNN itself isn't necessarily horrible. The biggest thing that I see right now that's kind of at the framework level that we've been provided guidance on is an opt-in and a cookie notification. Those are the two that are the biggest gray areas right now in terms of, platform support at the registration level, but we're getting conflicting answers on interpretation there. The whole concept being that the user needs to basically opt in to, letting you get your information. What we're being told by some is that the terms of use is enough to say if you are registering an account, you're opting in to use it. It's only if you would go into additional use like mailing lists and those kinds of things that additional is there. Everything else ends up, I think, tying way into other things. The big questions we're seeing right now are around deletion and the concept of being able to give the person everything that they've submitted and then being able to essentially wipe somebody away. Well, that then gets into what third-party modulars are you using? Are they leaving comments on blog posts? Are they interacting in a forum? Far kind of beyond the scope of what DNN can do or be aware of. At least that's what we've been seeing so far.
Yeah, I mean, there are two aspects of it. One is the DNN in the framework. We need to do whatever is necessary that we can provide guidelines to the modules developers, right? That this is how, if there a call that we can have to say when a user is being deleted, you should listen to that call. And there is already there are already events there in the system to say.
I think the problems currently are foreign keys which are placed onto the user's module, preventing the user from being deleted by a module. So that means if there's a foreign key, for example, from a forums module to the users table in the database, then you cannot delete the user anymore. How delete the user unless there's no cascading delete implemented? And that is, I know that a couple of modules behave like this. This would, of course, collide with GDPR. And,
yes, definitely.
Yeah, and I see another problem you didn't mention, Mitch. We currently we currently do index all users, which means we copy all the data from the database into the search index. And then even if it's not necessary, if the user is not included in search, and in my opinion, we should stop that. In DNN 9.1, it's the search index is used for search a user for user management, but this has been terminated in DNN 9.2. So in my opinion, we need to have a host setting, or at least a site setting where we say, okay, either enable or disable user indexing.
That setting, Sebastian, is already there.
No, as far as I know, there's a setting whether you display the user within the search results, but it always indexes the user from the data and copies the data from the database into the search index. into the scenes index. And in my opinion, this shouldn't be necessary. This is an unnecessary vector for attack. And this violates with GDPR as well.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Should be very easy to implement. But it is relevant for sites, especially if they, even if they do not display the users, that you get the user data in two different locations, stored in two different locations for nothing. It's even
we did have a
Yeah.
pending question, and Sebastian, maybe you've ran into this. There was a pending question on the whole concept of the activity feed as well and its relation. That's where that whole, like, do they need to opt into their information being shared is the pending answer that we have. Is if you allow people to register, those people are then included in your user directory. Now I can go to the activity feed and I can kind of start to browse through and find other user metadata. That's where that concept of opting into sharing and potentially being able to have a user profile property that says, no, do not include me in the activity feed. That is the only thing right now that we have is a real gray area that is, I think, a core feature.
Okay, well, it's about the same problem we have with a forum, where of course, if someone is posting to a forum, his data is his name is included with the forum, of course. So we do have a pseudonym, which is good. We do not require users to register, or this we use as a display name for a long time, and this doesn't need to be built from first and last names. So I think that is not a big problem. We usually do not display we do not display the email address, so that's fine as well. And for each of the profile properties, the user is able to determine himself, or should be able to determine himself whether he wants to show it or not, or it's the responsibility of the admin to make sure that this is not shown to anyone. So I think in this way we are quite safe. We have some issues with indexing. It's one of the subjects I wanted to talk with Ash. And but in general, I think we are very much with the GDPR compliance.
So Sebastian, I just posted a blog link here. I think take a look. I think it disables the user search as well, but we can talk later. The cookie, I think that's a skin object or something, right? The cookie notification, that could be a skin object or part of the...
I think cookie consent is not really part of GDPR, but I know that it's required in some countries in Europe, especially in Great Britain. Okay, they are not very long in Europe anymore, but anyway, there are countries where you need this cookie consent message to say, we use cookies, do you agree? As far as I know, there are some differentiations, whether it's a technical cookie or it's a cookie for tracking. So login cookie, at least in Germany, and most of the GDPR is coming from German regulation. So at least we do not require consent for those technical cookies, like for login and for convenience. But we need, of course, as soon as it's being used for tracking, for advertising, then that's a different situation.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I don't know.
And there's some arguments there about like Google Analytics being something that even if you're using Google Analytics, that cookie is there, but it is slightly separate from GDPR. It's just most organizations appear to be processing the two compliances together. Like if you look at, like what the ASP.NET team did with ASP.NET Core, they rolled in a couple of things for each. But that's again a little bit more user specific.
Yeah, do we know how WordPress or Drupal they are approaching this? Anybody have any ideas?
That link that Matt posted there about the CMS ready, that was posted by Kentico, but it doesn't say specifically what they're doing to address it.
Right. Just says that the CMS can help with some high level things, but we can't manage everything.
The data portability one's interesting. It means you should be able to export all activity related to a user on demand. That's interesting.
Yes.
You're going to have some
it has to be in a unique format, and it has, or a easily recognizable transportable format or something is the official thing. And that's the one where, as we're looking at people that are really looking to comply with GDPR, that's the biggest risk inside of DNN. But it's not something that I think we could really even do much of anything with, because it all depends if it's stored by their user ID, right? What we are seeing is two organizations that we're working with, they are taking a slightly unique path and accepting a certain level of risk with forum data. For example, 98% of their stuff is forum data. If somebody asks to be deleted, they're simply changing the username that was used to post that comment and changing it to former member and then removing the signature. But there's one attorney involved in the review that says that's not actually valid, because if that person in that forum post disclosed who they were in the content, then they've still violated GDPR. So the data portability and wiping stuff is by far the most complex technical one, and exaggerated greatly when you use third-party modules.
Okay. So yeah, to sum it up, guys. So I will need some of your help via the Slack channel to help kind of help build that solution, at least conceptually how that needs to. Do we have to expose an interface, abstract class? I don't know any of that yet. So just wanted to bring to your attention that is coming in very soon.
So the community activity stuff that I just sent you, Clint, it's funny that might actually have relevance in this context, because that's exactly what it does. It tracks user activity, right?
Yeah, so that's not allowed if you unless the user consented with it and knows that you are tracking. That's
no, but I mean, as far as a solution for data portability to identify and then provide an export of all the things that a user's done.
Okay.
Yeah, but Sebastian brings up a very interesting point. If, like, technically speaking, even log in the history of their login, but if that does include anything like tracking the number of times they liked a post or did something like that, that's considered user behavior tracking that requires the informed consent that you are tracking what they're doing, which ties into the cookie law. So there is an interesting tidbit, and that's why so many people are just saying, you know what, I'm going to give you the cookie notice and I'm going to comply with GDPR at the same time, so that they get around it, because there's no straight answer. And we've been involved with four different attorneys from 3 countries in the last 2 months trying to get an official answer.
For example, in Germany, we have very strict regulations regarding Google Analytics. That's why we have difficulties. We had years where we couldn't use Google Analytics at all. Now there is a special for companies, not for authorities. They can use Google Analytics, but there are 3 requirements. First, you have to inform the user about it. Second, you have to make a contract with Google about it. And third is that you have to anonymize the IP at least a little bit, so that there's no exact tracking of the user.
Wow.
So that's, otherwise we are not allowed to use Google Analytics on websites hosted in Germany. or by companies from Germany. So there are a couple of constraints. And maybe this supporting, no, at the moment, DNN doesn't support Google Analytics officially anymore, right, Ash?
So we did bring the connectors framework into the platform as of 9.2, and that comes with Azure storage. So the Google Analytics was kind of dropped, but there's nothing wrong. I mean, it can be brought back.
It's still there behind the scenes. I mean, you can still modify the analytics config and put all that stuff in there, but you just don't have a UI service.
You don't have a UI, right? You know, I just don't remember the reason why it was just dropped. I think it was the only reason it was dropped was that because there was no way to do it in Persona Bar. And that's why at that time, the connectors were not available in the platform. So that had to be done. So we have to bring it back.
I think so, and I think when we bring it back, we should add this option to this anonymized IP. It's a flag in the GA script, which is just a checkbox, and in my opinion, that would be helpful for GDPR as well.
Well, why don't you share your thoughts in Slack channel somewhere, Sebastian, so we can take a look?
Sorry?
Why don't you share your thoughts, like what you said, in Slack channel or somewhere, so I can go back to it and get it implemented that way?
Sorry, I don't understand what you mean.
No, the thoughts you said about the IP tracking, can you put all that as a requirement somewhere?
Yeah, okay, yeah, sure.
In a Slack channel or Jira ticket or...
Yeah. I put it on the channel later.
Okay. I do have one other question. I know Mitch and I were supposed to talk about the cloud a bit more. Anybody with experience with Amazon? Like, how do they have the same web apps? How do they do scaling?
They do in a way. I mean, a lot of our people in Amazon are doing more virtual machine scaling that I've seen. We have one Evoke customer that's scaled across 5 servers, I think, in Amazon, but they're all VMs.
So through the shared...
I was going to say, my experience with Amazon, I haven't done a lot. I'm mostly on Azure, but conceptually, it's the same setup where Azure has web apps and they have something very similar on Amazon. So if we're targeting Amazon, we shouldn't be expecting it to be on a VM. But the changes that we've been working on in the platform for cloud support should work on Amazon.
Right, I'm thinking more from a scalability perspective because it's not optimized. Like, for example, if you need to do multiple nodes, do you share the file system? How do you? I mean, it's challenging, right? Web form support is challenging in DNN or Evoke. I was wondering if someone has done something there that we could leverage and make it part of the platform.
Yeah, you know, the one thing that we do today, but we're not doing it from an architecture perspective, is you simplify like 80% of the puzzle if you can get the portals directory off of the webhead. So the stuff that, you know, Bruce Chapman's old article about the way to trick things to use a folder provider, you know, or in the case of some of our more advanced customers, they are utilizing something like Cloudberry or otherwise to push stuff always to Azure Blob Storage and then accessing it via a CDN. That solves the file sync issues spectacularly, because then the only things you have to worry about synchronizing is when you install a new module, and there's a lot better ways to do things. So in our load balanced environments, we're doing everything we can to stop users from loading content to DNN, unless it's being done through a folder provider that gets it out to something else other than local file system. So I still think that one of the biggest things we can do to help support portability is to make that process not something that you have to use a really detailed blog post and modify the install config and do things before you create your instance.
Yeah, so you essentially need a template, right, which is optimized for Amazon, a template that is optimized for Azure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like
something like that where you can just automatically.
Yeah, an installation package or something of some sort, right, that automatically does all of that for you.
Are there plans to port over the folder providers from Evoke to platform, or what's the long-term idea of
so the Azure storage provider is now part of the platform as of 9.2. I don't know about the others. There are others, right? There are Dropbox, Box, S3. I don't know yet.
Okay, thanks.
Well, as a first, I think we should, if we can get it to run optimally in Azure itself, I think that should be a pretty big win.
Ash, did I hear you correctly? Did you say that 9.2 supports blob storage now?
Well, the provider is there, yes. You will need to configure to use it, but yes, it does.
Okay.
Azure Blob Storage.
Okay.
And that's just the provider that you had in Evoke, right?
Yeah, the provider in Evoke is coming down to the platform.
Gotcha.
Ash, do you know in that provider, this is something that came up in the last couple of days. There used to be a way to set the CDN URL for the blob storage in 7x. It appears that when things moved to the persona bar, that setting was lost in Evoke. Do you know if that setting is still there? I know you can hack it in the database because we did it yesterday, but I'm curious if the interface is going to be there.
I have to take a look. Can't remember.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't ring a bell, but that doesn't mean it's not there.
Point to ask a different question.
Yeah.
Sean, have you had a chance to look at any of the videos or stuff that we've talked about for Next on .NET Core or the Razor Pages implementation where it started for .NET Framework and the DNN platform?
Yeah, so I watched the recording of I guess it was the last advisory meeting from last week. It was the one where you did the demo.
Yeah, I think it was that one.
Yeah, so I did look at that one. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'll have to, I guess, put together maybe my thoughts. It's hard to judge the effectiveness of any solution at this point because I don't know what the goals are that we're trying to achieve.
As I say, if you need to get back to me in an email or something, I guess the stuff that I was looking for feedback in is not so much if we're going to solve all of our problems by using the vnext.net core, maybe Orchard, maybe there's something else out there that I'm really interested in and it's got me really excited is from adding a Razor Pages implementation to DNN platform to creating something that is easy for module developers to understand that have done web forms because it's a very similar design pattern and using that as a base of a migration path to .NET Core. And whether we use, like I said, Orchard, the VNext stuff we started, or maybe something completely different from that, I think it would be very useful if we were able to still use a Razor Pages implementation to provide that transition path. And that's
Yes.
all I'm looking for feedback on.
Yeah, so from that perspective, I think that made a lot of sense. So you can you can influence developers today in a certain direction, and then whatever, it doesn't preclude the vNext. Like the vNext could be built from scratch. It could use Orchard. It could use some other platform. That's all to be decided, but it's at least building modules in that manner provides a migration path. So I thought that made sense.
Great. Just one of the things that we talked about in the discussion that we had, I want to say it was on Friday with a couple of people about Razor Pages and vNext, was our focus right now was going to be getting the Razor Pages in the DNN platform working more on feature parity with what's in .NET Core, so we could then submit a pull request and then build out an API that we are okay with the transition to transition into whatever that vNext is, and then be able to submit the pull request to the platform. And that pull request is granted out several months from now, or maybe or longer, but that's kind of where I've been focusing, or I'm going to be focusing my efforts on, is more getting the Razor Page support into DNN platform.
Right.
And it sounds like you agree with that's the correct direction to be heading into that.
Well, and yeah, and it was, I think, the direction also that other people were pushing for as well. I think Daniel Mettler was, in his PowerPoint that he put together, he was suggesting this type of an approach as well.
Cool. That's all I had. I just wanted to make sure that you were kind of on the same page as the other people that I've talked to about that direction.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's still kind of fuzzy to me, it's not related to that technology migration path, but what the goals are, like because I still feel, even following the summit. So Andy shared some, or had some communications with Mitch and I, just by email, and he wanted us to come up with a variety of different potential approaches, and then whittle that down to 2 or 3 that we would go to Microsoft with and present, and try to get feedback from them on which one they might be most interested in. Was that shared previously, Clint, with this group? Like that, so there, I think that you were looped in on that discussion with Andy as well. Like that was sort of the approach that he was telling us that he would like us to take.
Yeah, you're talking about just getting a couple different options, figure out which one the group wants to go with, as well as which one would make Microsoft the most, I guess, excited to potentially support us. Yeah, that was how I understood it.
And I started a document on Google Drive and have the link posted in the meetings channel. It's just outlining some options that we've already discussed. There's not a whole lot of detail under there, but it's just start on that at least.
Right. There's another. I personally fully support and think we should go in the direction of Razor Pages, because that made the most sense to me in my head, based on what we have for web forms, what we have for MVC implementation in DNN platform. If there's another path that anyone is thinking of, that is something that we could implement in DNN platform, to kind of go off what Sean was just saying, where Andy asked for multiple ideas, we can certainly look into that. To me, Razor Pages seems like a slam dunk.
Seems like the least costly approach for sure.
Right. And granted, under the hood, it's using the DNN MVC implementation currently, but it's not going to be using that when we go into vNext. But there is no Razor Pages inside of .NET Framework.
Yeah, I guess the other piece that I'm trying to make sense of here, we have 12 different angles going at the same time. Pre-summit, and Andy Triba's request is to come up with a plan, present that plan to Microsoft, and basically we architect it all. We get Microsoft to buy in. You know, what I learned from Summit, right, is we have Microsoft interested. We don't know what that means, right? Does that mean Microsoft has a you should go this route recommendation? I don't, right? I don't know. So, you know, I mean, I'm not, until I hear more from Scott Hunter, I guess I don't know. My only concern is you know, is continuing to spitball and create a bunch of plans of, well, we could do this, we could do this, we could focus on this. Is that time well spent? I mean, the Razor Pages stuff I think is a great direction forward and something that would be usable in current platform. But I don't want to be just, you know, I don't want to discourage anything here. I just want to be a little bit realistic that I think we do have some competing angles. And I don't know how to resolve that right now.
Can you elaborate on the competing angles?
Well, right, we can spitball ideas all day, but if Microsoft already has a plan or something that was communicated to Will, for example, and we don't know about it, we could be spitballing plans with no real need to spitball plans because maybe we will find out what they wanted. Maybe they didn't, right? I don't know. I have no idea what those conversations were. Nobody seems to know what those conversations are.
Right. The impression I got from all the info that's been coming at us over the past few months is that they're desperate to actually talk to someone who will still be there tomorrow and is able to do something and act on conversations.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's, what I know, you know, all I know is what was said in my brief conversation at Summit, which is that they want to communicate with somebody, they want to get something, you know, they want to see the community grow, but they also need to exactly find out who can they talk to that's still going to be there and make sure to be efficient use of their time. So, you know, again, does that change anything we do? I don't know. I just know that from my perspective, I personally don't see a ton of value in spitballing a whole bunch of ideas until we get a little bit more detail from Microsoft. But that's my own opinion.
But you said you're supposed to touch base with them this week, right, Mitch?
That is, yep.
Or at least that's what you were told by Scott Hunter, right?
That's what I was told by Scott Hunter. I've already emailed Scott Hunter, gave him information on what we've been doing, sent him links to you know, the blog post about, you know, what we've been doing at the Technology Advisor Group, and just kind of said, you know, how can we help get this straightened out? What can we do from a community to, you know, make sure that either we get the right people from ESW involved, or if we can work together with just the community, whatever we need to do to keep everybody in sync. If it means that us as community members, we have to help bridge that communication gap into ESW, you know, or whatever the case may be, you know, that request is out to him. And if I have not heard from him by probably early morning Friday, I will follow up. I just know that after MVP Summit, a lot of times Microsoft folks are a little bombarded.
Yeah.
But ideally, we'd have someone embedded in this team.
Yeah.
Also, Peter, you weren't here in the beginning of the meeting. Sean has the Orchard project lead is going to do a demo for us tomorrow at this time. Getting out an invite a little bit later.
All right, thanks. Interesting.
All right, well, so guys, we've got like, I don't know, 9 or 10 more minutes here. Are there any, topics you guys want to discuss? Questions? That's why I like, me personally, I just want to feel like we're making some progress. I think the GDPR conversation is definitely one we need to have, right? And then obviously seeing Orchard will help us make a decision moving forward. Any information Mitch gets back from Microsoft will also be helpful. But outside of that, is there anything you guys want to, I don't know, like actionable items that we can discuss?
Maybe what's helpful for GDPR as well is that we provide an UI for editing the terms of use and the privacy statement in the admin area, because this is currently very difficult. Even since DNN3, it's very difficult for many admins to locate those files. And in my opinion, this is something which needs to be modified for each website, and it shouldn't be too difficult to provide a UI just for these two resource keys.
So, guys, like I said, I think GDPR is a project that is 100% that has to be done. So whoever wants to participate, please, I had created a channel there. Please share your thoughts there, as I think we are very close on getting started on working on it. We don't know what to work on. I mean, that's where we are, right? So any help will be, any screenshots, mock-ups, whatever you want to throw, your ideas, and let's work as a group here to see what we can get done in a short period of time. We're not going to spend like 6 weeks or 8 weeks or something like this. Is probably, once we come to a consensus that this is what we feel is the right thing to do, then we're probably looking at a week or 2 weeks of development to actually get. I don't think it's, unless we want to go too deep with it, I don't think it should be that hard to do. What are some of the quick wins?
Hey, Mitchell, were you able to update the database for the Entity Framework stuff yet?
I have not yet. I will be doing hopefully I'll be able to work on that later on today.
All right.
Quick question. I had Benoit on the phone yesterday, and he was wondering if he was still going to get the platform for translation, Ash.
Yeah, Peter, that's where the confusion was. I was thinking that the developer who used to communicate had already sent an email out, and I just got a note from Clint today. He had sent an email out from like 6 weeks, a month and a half ago. And I was thinking that the whole community had bailed on us with regards to translation, because nobody responded. Now I have a feeling that the whole email, was an email group.
Yeah.
I think that's no longer working.
Went into a big void. Okay. So anyway, happy that you're
alias that went bust. So I have the email now. I have everybody's email.
All right.
So I'm going to actually follow up on that, because the email was sent like 6 weeks back. I didn't hear from anybody. Oh, you guys didn't receive it. I'll forward that email to you guys.
Yeah, it's not me, but at least the translators. Yeah. So
I'm one of the translators and I haven't got any information.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I emailed Ash yesterday as well.
So anyway, I mean that's it'll be good to see 9.2 come out, and it probably will need a little I don't know, messaging around it as well, saying, look, we're establishing a new how shall I say, production pipeline almost, right, with all the new people that are involved, and that was part of the reason that it was delayed a bit.
Yep.
I tried to contact Ash and Ken in order to get information, and I got to know that he's no longer with DNN Corp. So it's a little bit difficult to find someone who is still in charge.
Yeah. But anyway, for me, coming back to the earlier discussions that we had from the perspective of DNN Connect, I'd love to capitalize on our event as well to, I don't know, to have it kind of clear what the top level roadmap is going to be for the platform by that time. And then have Andy and whoever is there to explain that basically to our audience. So end of May, I think, is a great deadline for this group as well to kind of nail these things.
I agree.
Yeah. All right.
Like we are discussing for a couple of more years, it wouldn't be a benefit.
No, exactly. But I mean, of course, we have to. These have to be the best decisions we've ever made, right? As a team. I mean, this is the technically the most difficult thing we're going to try and do in the whole history of the project. So I'm very excited if we get that roadmap, and at the same time, very apprehensive that we do it correctly. Anyway, so good stuff.
How to improve the database as well as the structure. So of course that's where my focus lies.
Passion, yeah, exactly.
A couple of aspects where we can make more streamlined structure, which would even perform better.
Yeah.
So Sebastian, when we bring the liquid content to platform, which is soon, there is a schema that is in discussion. So I want to get your opinion, and that is, or anybody else who wants to participate in making sure that the schema is good. And I can't remember if it requires 2016 or 2017 SQL Server, the schema that was internally sort of designed. But we'll bring it up, and we'll bring it up and discuss and see what you have. So it will actually require a minimum of SQL 2016. I think we're going to look into the JSON type or one of that. I just have to go back to my notes.
That's the downside. I think if you currently if you make liquid content a part of DNN platform, and then you require everyone to upgrade to SQL Server 2016, that will be difficult, because I know lots of hosts don't have the licenses, especially for SQL Server. There are still lots of DNN SQL 2008 around, so that might become difficult. I would love to use the new lots of the new features of DNN of SQL Server 2012 and 2016. But I fear that if we currently make it a requirement, this will cause a lot of uproar in the community, or we will lose a lot of people, or they will simply not upgrade.
Is there a channel to talk about that schema, Ash?
No, there's no channel. I think it's time to create a liquid content channel.
Okay, yeah. Could you post in general when you do that? Be interested in looking.
Yeah.
You said that it was the JSON type that required the new version of SQL Server.
Yep.
Yeah, DNN 2016 allows you to have a column of type JSON where you can store JSON stuff directly, and then you can even like with the XML for XML type in SQL Server 2008 and later, and of course, it makes a lot of stuff easier, but making it a requirement makes it a little bit difficult for our whole community.
Well, it shouldn't be that hard to stick to store the JSON in the database as an varchar or whatever.
Yeah.
And then when you pull it out of the database, you just parse that into whatever you need it to as far as the code goes. So if that's really the only reason why we're upgrading to a newer version of SQL Server, we should be able to add some code in as we port that into platform to solve that problem and not require that upgrade.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, we tried to do this dynamic content back in 8.0, DNN 8.0, and that was using exactly some of those methods that you're trying to do, and it didn't scale. And that's why we have to rip it out. And the current implementation of liquid content uses DocumentDB, which is no SQL, and it's blazing fast. Really, really fast. So I am very concerned about using traditional columns to do, because it requires sorting and filtering and pagination into dynamic fields, right? Fields that are not defined; those are not hardened columns. So that's a challenge
The current liquid content is a service model, right? It actually works against an Azure service, isn't that true?
Yes.
So I would have thought that the slowest part of that equation would have been the network latency, calling Azure, not the database. So you're saying it's blazingly fast running against a service.
Right.
Is that correct? Is that true?
Yeah. So when I say blazing fast, it's the return is about 120 milliseconds to 250, less than, usually it's less than 200 milliseconds from a call from a browser. Mm-hmm. When you open it up in the browser, all the way return back, like when you look into the network traffic in the browser, it's around 200 milliseconds usually, end to end. And the database part is, and we profile it, like the database is like, it's around 10 to 50 milliseconds. It depends, right, what kind of query it is.
Right, so but in the new model, there's no network latency.
Right, but you know, Sean, our database, right, is so chatty. The moment we bring this into our traditional column structure, it's going to, because it's isolated right now, it's a service model, its own webhead, its own APIs, its own backend. It has no overhead of DNN, and that's why it's so fast. Now we're bringing all that back into DNN, and it's just going to be very, very slow.
I think if the database is designed properly, it shouldn't be, but that's just an opinion.
I think I need to have a look at the schema and look whether it's caused by the schema and what you're doing. And to be honest, I haven't had a look at liquid content yet, so I cannot really provide what's the real reason for it.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm kind of confused about something that you said. So in Evoke,
I have to drop.
In Evoke is, are we using Azure for the liquid content, and now the platform port we're going to be using only the database? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Azure, the Evoke liquid content will eventually end of life.
Okay.
As people upgrade to the newer versions, we will do a data migration from the Azure onto the local database, right? And
I have one client with Evoke, but they don't use liquid content because they are forced to have all the data in-house, and they're not allowed to, even their servers are not allowed to connect outside. So.
Yeah.
So I guess my next question is, for some of these databases that are using liquid content, how big are these databases? Are we talking 4, 5, 6 terabytes, or is it smaller?
No, they're not.
Okay, well, then I really agree with what Sean was saying. With performance, it shouldn't be, our database schema is designed correctly, and our ORM is a modern ORM. We shouldn't be having any type of performance problems, and we have proper indexes, because SQL Server, when we're using it in a database that's under a terabyte, it's fast.
Andrew, the problem is that you have a variable structure, and there are not very many options in a classic RDBMS to store a flexible structure in the database. Then you have if-then-else statements or something like this. You get more complexity, or you have a situation like with form list module, where you store each column in a SQL, each value in a SQL row, which isn't optimized. So that's, of course, you get a lot of overhead, which also affects then the data retrieval. And this, of course, makes it more difficult if you have flexible documents, or documents with individual structure. To store them in proper fields. Of course, you can store it in blobs, But the difficulty of blobs is that you cannot index properties with inside, and sometimes you need this as well. Of course, in some places you can make some intermediate approach where you say, okay, those are the common properties, and those are stored in the table, and the other ones are stored in a blob or in a subtable. But this, of course, this requires a lot of engineering, and the problem is with a generic solution like DNN, which has so many different use cases and people with so many different needs that it becomes very, very difficult. We had the same situation with Foreman's List before. I used to be the product leader at least 10 years ago, and I know that we had requirements where people wanted to store 100,000 records, and of course the performance decreased significantly, and this makes it not very easy to handle, of course.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, in my experience, why I want to see the schema, my experience with proper database schema, normalization, and indexes, you know, we shouldn't be seeing performance degradation with 100,000 rows. And maybe when you get up to 100 million rows. And so I'm just interested in seeing the schema there. So looking forward to your message, Josh.
Yeah. So I think that's a pretty, that's a great statement, though. Properly designed schema and having index will solve it, but this is a very specific use case. So when you go into DocumentDB, it's you can define any field type, right? Liquid content, you can define any content type, and you can have any content. So these databases are designed for that kind of dynamic schema, where by default, it's at the end of the day, it's a JSON structure. Any field, any attribute you have in the JSON, they create index for you behind the scene automatically, right? So you can query or sort on any of the fields that you want, and it's all available to you, right? And they're designed it that way. And if you were to do the same thing on SQL Server, create an index in every field, the database is going to blow up. I mean, it's been so big, you can't. It's just not practical. So it's not built for something like that, like a generic solution. So I personally feel, again, that's just my feeling right now, is when we build it for liquid content, we should have an abstraction layer for the database where people could actually use MongoDB. Because we would have, customers who would have large amount of data, and they're going to be pinned to the database. It's the same database. I think, in my opinion, the content database could or should possibly be separate or MongoDB, right? Those who want to install a MongoDB, which is a lot more optimized, why not? But again, it's going to increase our footprint of the software, lots of testing, but that's how you scale.
The more you separate aspects into separate databases, the more difficult you will have, of course, of using foreign keys and of keeping.
Yeah. So in the NoSQL world, there is no foreign key, right? That's how you have to design your system in such a way that it can survive. That's how you get web scale, right? So Evoke Liquid Content is a multi-tenant, assuming it's designed to serve all of DNN's Evoke customers. That's how it was designed to, right? And we had sort of Microsoft kind of help us design some of those some of the technologies that we used. So that's meant for web scale. That's how you do web scale, right? The partitioning, sharding, all of that is built in. Now, none of that is generally available in SQL Server that easily.
That means that
you're not going to get to leverage Azure's built-in caching for any of the document DB and all that. I mean, right now I love the liquid content and the APIs where I can just call it. I get one JSON data back, and as soon as we have to go to a flat structure and ORM, and then bundle that up back into a JSON, you're not going to get the performance. And no matter what your schema indexes are, you're not going to get that performance.
Hey guys, I've got to start another meeting here in 5 minutes. I have to jump off. So if we could wrap this one up, it'd be good for me.
Yeah, I got one follow-up question to that. So we're saying that the liquid content was designed to work with NoSQL. Is that what I'm hearing?
Today
document DB, yeah.
Yeah, today it is. It uses a NoSQL database.
And we chose that because Microsoft SQL Server doesn't scale. Is that Is that
It doesn't meet the scaling need for such a dynamic data type. SQL Server by itself scales really well, but the kind of solution we're building at SQL Server is not the tool to use.
okay?
SQL Server is built for relational data and not for flexible structures, and that's for sure is, and that's why Microsoft on Azure has this second database sorry, I forgot his name, which is a document database especially for this purpose.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's a different approach. I think what's most interesting for me in liquid content or in the first ideas for it was that it would be great to have data types in DNN, which we currently have with typical controls, and then we could, for example, use just a descriptive settings and just saying, okay, this module, for example, or a page has this following additional settings, and define what's the type and the control to be used for editing it and for displaying it, and then a little bit like Charles did it for the user profile, but in my opinion, those user profile properties are not sufficient to limit it and they do not have display controls, and they are too limited in a couple of ways. In my opinion, it would be much easier if you have such controls, which then could be building blocks. It would be make much easier to go to a new platform when we have just a description for each module, how its settings would look like, instead of really having this to be coded. That's just a dream.
So Daniel, you just came at the end of the hour. Right? Did you have your hour mixed up or what?
Well, actually, in Switzerland, we haven't had time zone switches yet.
Okay.
So you guys are 1 hour earlier, I guess. And I didn't realize that. I thought my iPhone was showing me a wrong appointment.
Yeah, that explains it.
I'll tell you the same thing I told Peter. Sean was on earlier, and he sent an email right before this meeting. He's got the project lead from Orchard is going to do a demo tomorrow at this time, the same time we had this meeting. I'm going to send out an invite here.
Awesome.
At this next meeting. So hopefully you can make it. I know it's last minute. If you can't,
Sure.
you know, we'll have the replay. But guys, I've got to end this one. I've got to start another one up here in 2 minutes. Thank y'all for attending, and we will keep the combo going in Slack. And hopefully after we see this Orchard demo, and we can kind of, you know, get a collective direction and start, you know, dividing some subtasks and getting actionable items and things like that. I think everybody will feel good. So.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Very helpful.
All right.
I'm sorry I missed it.
Nice.
We'll see y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.